And let me just first of all say thank you to everyone for joining. We'll give you a fair amount of detail here, but we really like to leave the bulk of the time for questions. And really, no question is out of bounds from my perspective. So, if you have questions, and I should say, even beyond Booz Allen, if you have questions about consulting in general, we're happy to answer those as well, meaning more general questions about the industry, et cetera. And more, we have, can you flip with next slide's intro? Yes. Okay, good. So my name's Dave Sulik. I'm a senior VP at Booz Allen. I currently lead our climate and infrastructure business, which is basically all the agencies that start with the weather enterprise all the way through FEMA responding to disasters. So about 9 different agencies that comprise that mission. I've been at Booz Allen for over 30 years. I have a policy background, and my primary focus has been going into places where sort of there are new legislative drivers that are kind of upending a mission. So if you looked at my career on a resume, it would make no sense unless you knew that fact. So I've jumped all over the place. Good example. When the Affordable Care Act was passed during the first Obama administration, I started to do healthcare. I knew nothing about healthcare, and I ended up spending 10 years there. And it was great. So anyway, I'll turn it over to Maura.
Thanks, Dave. I'm Mara. I have a Master of Science in Health Policy and Management from Carnegie Mellon University. And I graduated in 2020 and have been with Booz Allen for the past 4 years. And I support the health account, specifically the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. When I joined, it was the height of COVID and also an election year. And, a lot of things TBD, right? We didn't really know what the future was going to hold. And it's been really exciting to see, how Booz Allen has kind of also weathered those changes, and specifically my client has changed. And the group I support was fairly new when I joined, and so it's been neat to see, a government agency kind of in that startup environment and to be able to grow with it. So I'm still in the health account. I actually was an intern in 2019, the summer of 2019, and that's where I first met Dave. And so have been, really, really grateful to the support that, Dave and Booz Allen has given me, especially coming out of grad school. And we'll talk a little bit more about the policy analytics cohort, which, my year in 2020 was kind of like the pilot year. And so definitely we have time and some slides dedicated to that overview. So with that, Dave, you want to take it away?
Yeah. And again, I'm going to do this really quickly and let you guys ask us questions because we could say a lot of things about consulting. But I think specifically to Booz Allen, I'll say this is one very important distinction, especially for grad students to know, is that we're really a federal contractor. So 95-ish% of our work is federal. We do a little bit of state and local work, very little, and a little bit of commercial work. So our primary role is to advise federal agencies. We touch pretty much every agency in the federal government at this point. I think we talk later about our size, so I won't go into that. And one of the nice benefits of federal consulting versus maybe some of the others is we probably have a significantly better work-life balance because we're regulated by something called the Federal Acquisition Regulations, and so most of our staff, it's challenging. Even if we wanted to work people more than like 45 hours a week or 40 hours a week, it's pretty hard to do. So versus like if you went to work for McKinsey, you really need a lot of caffeine because they're probably working you 60 hours a week kind of thing, right? So I'm not saying they're bad, just saying it's a very different lifestyle working with the federal agency. And we are very focused at Booz Allen. You're gonna hear this like 5 different times in the next slides. We're very mission oriented. That's our focus, is how do these agencies accomplish their mission? So Maura, do you want to flip to the next slide? This will give you a couple of details about us. I actually think this slide's pretty dated. Like, I mean, it changes pretty fast. So, what it hasn't changed is we were formed in 1914, so it's great. We're actually up to 35,000 employees now, and we're a little over $10 billion as a company. And you can see the mix below, and I really going to emphasize this slide. So we have commercial, listed, defense, intel, and civil. Maura and I are in the civil market, and that's really what this is focused on. If you have interest in defense or intelligence agencies for whatever, you can certainly send me an email, which will be at the end, but it's not really what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about the bubble that says civil. I don't know, more anything you want to add on this?
I mean, I think, we get a lot of questions about our commercial space, and it's definitely a much smaller percentage of our work when compared to our federal. But recently had a colleague of mine transition from the civil sector into commercial. So, and it's a possibility, but definitely just want to flag that it is a much smaller portion of our work. That private sector commercial consulting. So to Dave's point, Booz Allen is different than your McKinsey or any other consulting
Or
firm like that.
Deloitte or Accenture, et cetera. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. We can talk about that if you guys have questions. Uh, this shows our footprint. It's a little deceiving in the sense that probably 65% of our staff are DC Metro. Obviously, COVID changed. Although you can see we do have in the civil market over 100 people in Seattle. So not that we're not nationwide as an example. Um, and when you see some of the bubbles, some of these bubbles are around commercial or civil work. So, like Atlanta, we do a lot of CDC work. But then you'll see a bubble like San Antonio. Well, there's a military base there, and they were pretty active. So, our locations tend to be driven by where customers are as much as where we want to be. And so that's why DC Metro is so large because the vast majority of our customers are headquartered here in DC. Next. I'm not going to read all these to you. These are sort of awards that we get. I think a couple of things I would emphasize through this is, we really are very focused on employee experience. I will be entirely transparent that COVID is still a challenge for our industry. Do you bring people back into the office? Are people virtual? Are people remote? That is still an adjustment that I think our industry, consulting business is not mandated, for instance, the way Amazon has that people come back into the office, but it has created some challenges. And I'll say the challenges are twofold: where people work, but consulting firms are also very culture centric, and so our culture is changing a bit based on COVID. And good example, I'm in our DC Metro office, but Maura has always worked in Pittsburgh, so it's not like it's not uncommon, but it definitely is sort of an area that I think has been perhaps as challenging to our industry as any in terms of trying to figure out how to keep tight cultural connection when people aren't together. Um, Anything on this
Exactly.
one you want to add?
Yeah, I wanted to flag, like Dave said, I am remote from Pittsburgh, and like I started in 2020, and Booz Allen wasn't going to force me to move in the middle of a of a public health emergency. But I can attest to the strong cultural bonds that we have at Booz Allen. I am currently a part of a Civil Reconnect, which is like I think it might be a yearly event that people across the civil sector can get together and meet virtually and work on certain challenges. Like we just had a step challenge last week that we were all doing together virtually, and like keeping track of. And so it's a fun and like it's a fun event for you to just like meet new colleagues, even though we're in like a fairly virtual environment. So wanted to flag that we have a really great culture, and it's obviously evident by all of our awards, but just wanted to share that example.
So one of the things, and this could be definitely a question for you all if you want to ask it. We're very much centered on what we call career managers, and so you'll see to the left, and in the greenish box where we say career manager. So in some companies, when you're hired into consulting, you're hired into what they would call a sort of a pod. So it's a group of people, and you have support. We hire into teams, and you can start to see how that would affect you. Like, so you would be assigned a career manager. That person's responsible for helping develop your career over time. You also get a job leader, so that's a project you're working on. Sometimes these are the same people, sometimes not. So that's another resource. But I think the main thing that I like to emphasize is there's a lot of opportunity for mentorship and networking, and not networking in sort of and Maura and I have just done our orientation for our cohort, which we'll talk about. And we're really trying to explain that networking in the way we talk about it isn't really the way maybe networking is thought of. When you first start here, you go through a process of having a lot of one-on-ones with both peers and leaders. And what's really nice about that is you get to hear about different experiences. And so usually I would say more for the first like 20 to 30 days, someone's on a job, you're going to end up doing 20 of these. And I think it's really beneficial. I don't know, you've been talking to our current new hires more than I have the last couple of weeks. I mean, what are their sort of perspectives on that?
Yeah, I think at first it can be kind of daunting to be like, oh yeah, your first couple weeks, just get to know people. I think you're caught off guard. You're like, wait, I'm truly just supposed to network and like meet people. And your career manager is like, yes, please, you want to build your own network and support system so that when you do get on a contract, you already have those people in place to like bounce ideas off of or ask questions. And so I think, there is kind of that like first couple learning curve to get comfortable with actually asking people to connect, and especially in a more virtual environment. Doing a meet and greet can kind of be awkward, but everybody's doing it. It's more so just putting yourself out there. And I think with our current cohort and with many of our past cohorts as well, one of the characteristics we look for is a self-starter, and like you motivate yourself, you advocate for yourself. And so, you need to be able to do that in order to meet new people and just kind of go for it. And so I think there is a little bit of a learning curve. But most of the people that end up at Booz Allen get comfortable with the meet and greets. And I remember even when I was an intern, we were encouraged to reach out to people, introduce yourselves via email, and say, I'm really interested in your career path. I'd love to learn more. And I'd say the culture of Booz Allen is we pay it forward. Everybody has gone through this. Everybody wants to continue to meet people and grow their own network, and so it's mutually beneficial. It's definitely rare, but and kind of confusing at first because you're like, this can't be right. There's no way they just want me to like meet people and not do any work. But it's true. Like, we really want you to build your support system, and then so you have that at baseline.
Yeah, I always joke that our company is kind of like weirdly this giant social network with fake org charts thrown over the top of it.
Right.
That's what it feels like most of the time. So, our organization does change quite a bit. Like our structure, we're very oriented to structuring our company along the lines of how our customers look, and so we change fairly frequently organizationally. But that social network is that grounding in the company. So good
Yeah.
points, Morris. So, why don't you flip ahead? Um, the one thing I do really like about, especially the civil market, where we work, a lot of community activities. So we engage quite extensively, and I would say both a structured and an unstructured way. So structured ways would be like planned walks and other things you'd be familiar with. Or we have a Booz Allen Foundation that engages with a lot of community organizations. So like one of the things that I was involved with, I helped our team do is the United Nations here in DC, one of their adjunct offices wanted to do a women in STEM session. And so I was able to, you know, identify at multiple levels in the organizations, emerging female leaders in STEM, and we put this panel on. It was hugely successful, and it was oriented towards high school students, I should say. So it was great, and so there are a lot of opportunities to do it, but there's also opportunities to initiate it. Back to Maura's point, if you had a community program you were interested in, there's a lot of structured ways to kind of create something new. It doesn't, you don't just have to fall into what we're already doing. There is a big emphasis here, I should say, on particularly health and military families. You might have noticed on a slide earlier, about 30% of Booz Allen are actually veterans. We have a large defense business, so you would expect that. So, and we do a lot of work with the VA. The office I'm in some days down in our DC offices, directly across the street from VA headquarters, and so we do quite a few things with the VA. That seems both VA mental health, homelessness, and overall health. Those are three major initiatives that I think probably rise to the top.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Okay,
Uh,
next, Maura.
yeah.
Maura, you want to talk through this one?
Yeah, for sure. So, like Dave has mentioned, we're currently recruiting for our civil sector, which includes citizen services, domestic resilience, and health. Health is where I align. Dave is with domestic resilience, which includes our climate and infrastructure work. And we have our four other sections, commercial, global defense, and national security. And then we have these enterprise organizations. And these enterprise organizations are really meant to help keep Booz Allen running accordingly and continue to build work. And there's the Enterprise Technology Services and Solutions, the Chief Technology Office, and the Chief Technology Office. For example, I work in health, but I've tapped the CTO, as we like to call it, for ideas on how we could incorporate more AI into the work that we're delivering for CMS. And so it's, even though they're separate, we kind of have all of our hands in the same pot, right? We're trying to help each other and build Booz Allen capabilities to win more work and support the clients that we currently have. Anything else on this, Dave?
I mean, the CTO, just so you guys have a sense of, so that's where we invest in emerging tech. And so we have three primary areas of focus today. It obviously changes over time. So today it's artificial intelligence, machine learning, which would expect Booz Allen is actually the largest provider of AI services to the federal government today. So we have a pretty significant investment in quantum. And happy to talk a little bit about that because one of the people that's driving quantum is she doesn't have a physics degree. Let's leave it at that. She's more of a policy-ish person that tries to take we have like 30 PhDs in physics who are great, but like someone like me can't understand what the hell it is they're talking about most of the time. So her job is to be that translator, not just to us, but to our customers. Because I think a lot of our customers are interested in quantum, but can't really figure out exactly what it is. And then cybersecurity. So we do a lot of emerging technologies around how to protect both networks, but also critical infrastructure in the United States. So,
Thanks, Dave.
you can go to the next one because I think so. To me, of all the slides that are important in this briefing, this is the most important, and so I'm going to cover it really quickly. And I'm happy to take questions. So you've heard a lot of terminology. Like we have citizen services and we have domestic resilience, and we have all these buzzwords. But in our civil sector, this is really what matters to us. These are the 6 missions that we are focused on. And there's a cross-cutting theme, which I'll pull out. And I'm going to kind of cover them really quickly. And I'm going to start at the lower and go up. So we support law enforcement. So what does that mean? So we're doing work today with the FBI. We're starting to do more and more work, for instance, with the Drug Enforcement Agency around fentanyl interdiction. So when you think of the mission, it really is at the front line of that mission. So for our law enforcement team, again, it's really working with the agencies that are responsible for public safety related issues. And so again, FBI, DEA, and associated other agencies. Number 2 along the bottom is healthcare transformation. This is actually where Maura works, right? So this is where we're doing work for organizations that really either deliver healthcare or pay for it. So Centers for Medicare, where Maura works as an agency, obviously it's like the nation's backup insurance plan, right? So, they pay bills, but we also do work directly for agencies that deliver healthcare. I mentioned the VA. Next one over, citizen services. The best way to think about this is when the government is delivering a benefit or a service to a citizen. So that could be something like USDA, Department of Agriculture, that's delivering a service directly to farmers. It could be Department of Labor, where they're doing work programs, and upskilling. It's the IRS, which collects our taxes. So any agency that deals day to day with citizens. Up in the upper right is life sciences and public health. So we do a lot of work today for primarily three agencies, I would say NIH, CDC, and FDA. And this group was quite busy during COVID. We helped run one of the largest networks of linking all the various systems out there that were tracking COVID, to include University of Washington, which is one of the best in the country to track it, and to integrate that to create what we would call a common picture. So taking different perspectives on COVID and melding them together. Immigration and migration, pretty self-explanatory, but we support a lot of the agencies dealing with border-related issues. And then last, which is my bucket, is climate and infrastructure. What we're really focused on is climate. We're not really doing a ton around sustainability. We're really focused more on the concepts of adaptation and resiliency. So recognizing there are changes happening, how do you create a society that is more adaptable and resilient to those changes? And just to give you an example, one of the things I'm working on more and more is like the issue of insurance, and how, as these disasters get worse, insurance companies are exiting markets, and what does that mean to the country and to homeowners, which is really significant. So, and what underlies all these, and I think it's really important, is our job as a consulting firm. What we really do is, today, technology is really changing how the government executes its mission. And so what we see ourselves as doing is really two things. One, helping the government embrace those technologies and modernize while not breaking something. And so what do I mean by breaking something? Well, a lot of times you can introduce a technology and it's great. It's a new technology, but it's not actually achieving the mission outcome you wanted it to. So we feel like we're an important element in helping knit these missions together with technology. And then I think the second thing is really unleashing the power of data to really help them understand where they can use data to make decisions better, faster, more effectively. So that data and technology piece is embedded in all these, and probably is pretty much, I would say, if I were to say, what's the future driver where Booz Allen's going, it's really helping the government execute through this massive change in how they do work, to include things like Gen AI and other things, which is certainly weighing on all our clients' minds these days. Why don't we go to the next? I think the next one's the last one, is it, Laura? I think so. You want to start with this one, and then
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great. So I mentioned at the top of the call the cohort, and we would like to refer to it as the policy analytics cohort. And the goal is really to continuously recruit 20, 25 really exceptional graduate students in certain degree areas that intersect, the key missions Dave mentioned, analytics and critical thinking. And so that's kind of how we got the name policy analytics, right? Being able to understand and analyze policy and pair that with data analysis and data science. So the goals of the cohort are, like I said, continuously growing and creating a common journey for all of the new members that join each year. So, in order to do that, we recruit a very diverse set of graduate students from multiple different schools, multiple different degrees, that we know will bring a varied set of skills, and we can learn from one another. And another goal is to really just increase the connection between peers. And Dave and I were mentioning the importance that Booz Allen puts on networking and creating your support system. And this is just another example of that. Really want to, go from the transition of the education, like the classroom, into the workforce very seamlessly. And so you can kind of think of the cohort as a class, your classmates, right? And you'll be in your first year, the new members of the cohort, and you'll learn from past members, people who had just finished their first year at Booz Allen. They can become your mentor. And then people who have been at the firm for a little bit becoming, a manager, and kind of being able to answer your questions, and but also having the cohort to bounce those questions off one another, and have that peer-to-peer interaction. And another important piece of the cohort is, we're all bringing these varied skills to the table and being able to learn from one another, but also growing and building together on new skills that can benefit, your consulting career. And so this is just, an example of some skills we look for in candidates, being very hardworking and driven. Again, mentioning the difference in consulting, and we are specific to federal work, and really having a passion to benefit the American people. Also pairing your qualitative and quantitative skills, kind of that policy analytics balance where you can do that, policy analysis, the qualitative analysis, but pairing it with some data science skills. And again, going back to the networking piece, you really have to be a self-starter. You have to be an advocate for yourself and motivated in order to be successful at Booz Allen. And I think another way of framing that is just, as you are all in a graduate program, I think that's a testament to how curious you are and how you all want to, continue to learn and grow. And so I think that's, being a self-starter, those two things go hand in hand. And also being able to work in teams. Every single project I have worked on at Booz Allen, you have to have a team, and you're not doing anything on your own or independently. Yes, of course, you need to have the skill set to work and produce products on your own, but being able to have the communication skills and the teamwork experience is vital. And that word cloud at the bottom was actually something the cohort from this past year created based on the resumes from this incoming cohort. And it was, the phrases that occurred in high volume. So you see policy, you see data, you see research, management, public, right? You see leadership. These are all just examples of words that I think really show the variety and background of our cohort members currently. Before I get into the details of the actual opportunity that is currently open, I wanted to pause for Dave to add anything regarding the cohort.
I mean, I'll definitely leave a bulk of this for Q&A if you guys have questions, but and it says it here. One of the things I was going to say, and it more predictably has it on the next slide, it's always happens to me, is we said graduate students of varying degrees, but really the core group is really MPP, MPA, MHA, MPH. Now, it's not to say we wouldn't accept others. We had 2 years ago, we had a computer science and electrical engineer in our group, right? So it's not that we limit it. It's just we're targeting policy people, and MHA and MPH are really public policy-ish degrees for people in the healthcare space, in my view. And there's some reasons for that. I'm going to give you like a very quick spiel. Is part of our job in what we do today is translating technical requirements, right? How the government's going to transform, as I described. But you have to bring in understanding the context of that mission, and policy people are exceptional at that. And so we really are pairing more and more policy-oriented people with technologists so that we can get it really produces a much better outcome for the customer. And that's just the easiest way to say it. So a lot of our competitors will build tools and technologies, and they're really awesome, and they use the latest and greatest, and then it shows up at the customer site and it's not actually producing the outcome the customer wants. And so we're really leaning very heavily into pairing the skill sets that you all learn in your programs with those technologists in an integrated team. And so if people are like, well, I thought you said technology, now it's policy. Our CEO has something he calls mission stacks, which would take me weeks to try to explain. I only barely understand myself now. I do, but the idea is we want to live at the nexus of mission and technology, But when we say mission, it really is understanding that overarching policy environment that drives that mission. And so that's why we created this program, is to really fill that hole. And we feel master students in particular, as Maura said, we love what the skill sets that master students bring in. And we're recruiting at different schools because each of these schools, as we've learned, teaches you a little differently. And so we really like the biodiversity of not just benefiting from the degree, but honestly benefiting from different curriculum that the schools offer. And so that's why we reach out to schools like Washington so we can get, you know, get some benefit from a different way that you all have been learning. So, all right,
Yeah.
back over to you, Morris.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. And so before I dive into the opportunities, I just wanted to share a little bit about my experience in the cohort. And when I joined, it was 2020. I think there were really just a handful of us, and we all had backgrounds in education adjacent to health policy and public health. And I have been able to, well, before I get into that, but having that just group of people, especially during COVID, going from my graduate program into the workforce, I was nervous. And I think being able to have a close knit group of people that come from a similar educational background was really comforting. And the cohort has expanded significantly. This past year, we've welcomed closer to 25 people from a variety of backgrounds, not just health policy. We have somebody with a PhD in political science. We have another engineer. We have a master of psychology as well. And so we're able to pair these people together, and we grow together. And so I was going to say, I've been able to grow with my policy cohort since 2020. We've all been promoted. The colleague I mentioned who transitioned to commercial, she and I actually started in the cohort together. Another colleague of mine supports our kind of like sister contract at CMS. And so she and I contact each other all the time, whether it's just to catch up or actually talk about the challenges both of our clients are facing. So it's just a really wonderful way to help ease the transition from education into the workforce, especially in consulting, when it can be very mysterious and you don't actually know what you'll be working on as soon as you join. So I just wanted to share that because I really value this program that Dave has created. So to the opportunities, the full-time opportunity is focused towards second-year graduate students, or those students that would be graduating with their graduate degree in spring of 2025. So and also you have the ability to obtain a security clearance, and we are looking to get those applications in on no later than Monday, October 14th. And we're trying to have a really quick turnaround, just to help you through the process, and if you have any other competing interviews or offers. And so we'll notify you of an interview the week of October 21st, and those will take place into late October, early November. So we want to move quickly. And then if you are not graduating spring of 2025, we do have an internship opportunity. That application is not currently open. It will open in mid-December, and interviews will take place in the January 2025 timeframe. It's a summer internship. It is 10 to 12 weeks. You'll be placed on a project, really be encouraged to network and meet with people, and also get a taste of what consulting is. This was a little bit different than my internship. I was a summer games internship, and so that is another option. But it is geared more towards undergraduate students. I was one of the few graduate students, and it was a great experience. But definitely, this internship is geared more towards those people in pursuing an advanced degree. Anything about the timeline, Dave? We have this timeline or the opportunity. I'm happy to go over a little bit further in detail.
So More, I think we should, let me say one thing and let's just get the questions. So,
Yeah.
but leave this up because I think one of the things, that's really important is we know that, students, may get other offers. There are two things I'll say about this I think are important. So one, we will notify people if they are or are not interviewed. So what we don't want to do is have someone to, waiting around to see if they're being interviewed with us and they may turn down an opportunity somewhere else. So that's our goal is to be as transparent as we can be, as quickly as we can be. Our interview process, because I'm sure we'll get questions about this, is it is really a conversation. You're not going to be given a pencil and a rubber band and be told to solve world hunger. We don't believe in sort of some of
Right.
the things that people are being asked to do on interviews. It'll be a conversation with two people at once, so it'll be a 2-to-1 interview. We're planning 45 minutes. The way they break down is really be 15 minutes of you describing yourself and what you're interested in, 15 minutes of back and forth, and then we give you all 15 minutes of Q&A of us asking us questions at the back end. I think that's really important. One of the things I'll say about all consulting firms is on paper we look the same. Culturally, we're very different. And I'm not trying to say we're better and others are not. We're just different. And so I think that's a good chance for you to really test the culture, of the company if is it kind of the place that you wanna go. We make hiring decisions quickly. Offers will go out. I will say, unlike other consulting firms, we're not going to give you some deadline. I mean, there is a deadline, but the deadline is we kind of need to know you're showing up at some point. So, and we have to have some cutoff date, but it won't be like we'll give you an offer and you only have 30 days to make it. If you need more time, we're always happy to give you more time to make that decision. I would say probably a real drop dead date would probably be like April 1st, only because we have to plan for people to show up. And one thing that we do is we usually will do 1 or 2 phone calls before you start with the whole cohort that's coming in. And usually the way they work is the first call generally is congratulations. Talk about any questions you have about coming on board. I will say many of our cohort members, not all for sure, but many have moved to DC. And so there's often a question of where do I live in DC? What's a good neighborhood? Where's an affordable place to live? So that first call generally covers those topics. Second will be a little more around what are some things you can do to prepare before you show up? They're not mandatory, by the way. We did have one person 2 years ago calling from Japan. I have no idea what time of the day it was when he was calling in. He was very sleepy. But it's not mandatory. You'll have a career manager you can ask questions of. You'll be assigned your career manager when your offer goes out, so you'll know who that is. But our goal is to make this process very transparent to you all. So, and probably the biggest question we run into when people accept offers is their desired start date. We tend to like people to start a little later in the summer for a variety of reasons, which I can explain. But we're not limited to that. I should also say if you're a December graduate, it doesn't disqualify you from applying. Every year we seem to have 1 or 2 December graduates who start. So we said, May 2025, but if you're December 2024, you should certainly feel free to apply. What we don't want is first year students basically who are graduating in 26 to apply. That's the main thing. Or as we find every year, 5 or 6 undergraduates that somehow find this application and apply. Anyway, so I think I don't think we have anything else. Is that correct? This is the last slide.
No, just contact information, universityrecruiting@bot.com. And then, of course, our purpose is to empower people to change the world. I know that sounds a little gimmicky and cheesy, but it is really true. And, Booz Allen is really passionate about our missions, and it really does start with you all. And so, yeah, we're ready for questions, and you can find our emails here, and also the QR codes take you to the Handshake application as well as the Workday application. So yeah, we can definitely open it up for questions.
And I don't know, you can either raise a hand or just speak up, but we won't be able to. I can't. Or more, you may want to take the slide
Slideshow.
down.
Yeah.
Yeah, might be easier. All right, so any questions?
I have a question. Hi, my name is Lily. Thank you guys so much. This was very informative. I'm a first year student and I'm also a part-time student, so I won't be graduating until 2027. but I'm wondering what advice you have if I'm interested in this to prepare myself beyond just my normal MPA course load.
Yeah, I can give you a couple of things. So I think one thing that I find helpful, well, two things that are helpful for folks that come into this program, I would say, and I want to be very careful because one of them will sound more perhaps extreme than I mean it. So a lot of what we do is data centered, right? And so having comfort with data is really important. Now, there are a number of ways to do that. So you could decide I'm going to go off and do a crash course in R or Python. Great. That's certainly valuable. But this cohort is not 25 people that do Python and R. So we go from, there are people like that, all the way through people that have really strong qualitative skills and great writing. So, a great example, one of the other schools that we recruit at, every year, the first person I target is a writing scholar. Because we found that's really helpful. Because I will say to all of you, and I think this is not just true of Booz Allen, it's true of our entire industry, is probably one of the skills that's in shortest supply is really good writing. So if you can really write well, and so I would say a couple things how you can help yourself. If you have a very specific mission area you're interested in, um, you have to write papers for class. I would find one of those papers that you think is really exceptional and really keep tweaking it. Maybe get faculty feedback on it. Don't just take the paper you had, tweak it, and then either as part of your application or other ways, submit a writing sample. A lot of us can't ask for a writing sample. There's a variety of reasons for that, but nothing precludes you from submitting one. And I do think good writing or putting a cover letter together, those things can really be helpful in the application process. But back to the coursework, take some of your coursework and turn it into artifacts that you can use both as part of the application or in interviews. So I would say, even though I'm very old, none of you on this call, to include anyone from the career office, I think was born when I started here at Booz Allen. But the way I got into Booz Allen was I brought a writing sample with me and gave it to them. And I think it really did tip the tide towards, hey, we really kind of want this guy in here because they read the quality not just of my writing but my analysis. And a paper can show a lot of things about how you think and how you frame policy issues. And so I'd encourage you to do that where you can. Again, some applications are challenging. They only let you submit one attachment, and so it can't always work. But I think showcasing some of your work. And then last thing, back to the data thing is to the degree you can, so you may not want to program, but even starting to play with visualization tools, doing quantitative research, which maybe doesn't involve programming, but you're looking at statistical sort of models. All those things I think can be very helpful. And again, I would just say that all of the companies in our industry, we're becoming more and more quantitative. And so I would just, make sure that you're able to speak to how your comfort with data is going to be, I think, a question you're going to get from any management consulting firm. I don't know more if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, I would just say don't shy away from any classes or coursework that might scare you, like data related to data. That's one of the regrets that I have with my graduate school experience is, not taking that Python course because I was like, oh, I'm not going to be good at it. But, powering through because getting that experience and the hands-on work with that data while you're a student is great. And then you can take that to your work to your job and kind of apply it however fits. So just don't be afraid to jump into data. And I guess I'd say, yeah, being able to write well and produce really good presentations, that's huge. But yeah, I'd say if I could talk to myself in grad school, don't be afraid to take that Python course or a course that, might intimidate you because you're a student and now's your time to grow and learn.
I want to be a little careful because this is where I say we sort of exaggerate. So a little bit the need. I would say that part of the reason, so I didn't program in Python and R, but I've learned other programming languages in the past, right? Just fiddling around, honestly. And so this is not to say your job will be you're now using Python and R every day. I think what's really important though is we do have data scientists here who that is all they do. But again, going back to my original point, they sometimes don't understand actually the question that's being answered with the data. So sometimes you're gonna have to, and I'm gonna use a really quick example. We were building a model here around opioid addiction and looking at some of the policy implications. And we had this data science team that built this really great model for us. We're like, this is amazing. And then myself and another colleague picked up the hood of the engine and went, holy smokes, some of the leaps of faith that were made by the data scientists just weren't real, right? Your ability, I couldn't have known that without understanding the logic of how programming worked. So again, it's not that you'll be programming every day, but I think you do have to understand the logic structures that go into how we analyze data. And so to Maura's point, that's why the class is probably more valuable. It's what's the methodology by which data scientists build their models so that you as a policy person aren't just, I always joke, if you're a policy person that doesn't understand models and you give them all this data and they spit out the answer 7, well, you don't know if 7's right or wrong if you don't understand the data model, right? So that's why I think it's important. It's not so much that you'll be programming every day. I want to be clear about that. Like, Maura, you don't program every day. Like, please
No,
reinforce the other.
yeah, I think Dave makes such a good point that this cohort finds people that are translators. You understand what's happening in the data model, and you can explain it to the true policy qualitative folks that don't quite get it.
Exactly.
So being that middleman is key. And yeah, someone told me, at the beginning of my time at Booz Allen, I was like, yeah, like I know how to code, but I don't really want to do that. And they're like, don't worry. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it. Booz Allen hires people specifically, like Dave was saying, who want to do that as their job every day. You don't have to. It's just good that you know how to do it and you can understand it. So,
Yeah, and the last great point is as ChatGPT gets better, we won't need those coders anymore. Anyway, policy people can just start just asking ChatGPT to build the code for
right.
us.
Yeah.
So anyway, so thanks. Great question, Lily. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions?
I was wondering, thank you both for being here today and presenting. I was looking at the job posting and I see that the location is listed in Virginia, but I heard you both speak a little bit to remote possibilities. I'm wondering for this opportunity, is relocation to the East Coast a requirement or is it open to remote work?
Yeah, so I would answer I'll give you the classic consulting answer, which is it depends, right? I think there's a preference for DC. That's the way I would say it. And I'm going to give you very transparently why. I think we have found with this cohort, and I think Maura, you'd agree the last 2 years, the majority of people have relocated, but not all. So we have current cohort today that just started. We have one in Los Angeles. We have one in Ann Arbor, Michigan, right? So it's not a requirement. But we'll want to talk to those individuals because the possibility to work remotely exists. But I think we have to be very conscious about making sure how you're connected into the organization. So again, I mean, you all benefit in a way because so the person in Ann Arbor, there's not a Booz Allen office within like 500 mile. I don't know. It's not close, right? We do have a Seattle presence. We have over 100 just in our market, civil people in Seattle. We have defense presence there as well. So Seattle might be a more viable. So the reason I say it depends is, well, if we were recruiting at the University of Nebraska right now, there's not an office anywhere nearby, right? So that feels a little more of a stretch for us. We're really trying to make sure our staff have a chance to connect with the culture. And so because we have presence in Seattle, it's probably a more viable option than it would be, again, in a different part of the country. So that's why I say it depends. Um, so we, so I would say we will bias to DC, but as I just shared, we have people who are not here and they're both, they're very able to find work and do work. But I think that our leadership does bias too. We want you embedded to feel our culture, and it's just hard to do that if you're in a place where there's no other Booz Allen people, bluntly.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and Dave mentioned our most recent orientation day that was on this past Friday. And, I came into DC from Pittsburgh and all of our cohort members were there in person in the office. We were able to connect face to face. And I definitely miss out on a lot of those opportunities because I'm not in person. And granted, I'm very grateful that I wasn't required to relocate in 2020. But do I wish sometimes that I had the option to just walk down the street and go into the office and be able to chat with my coworkers? Absolutely. I think, especially with the cohort, you're able to, you know, pick a day that you're all going to go into the office together so that you can make it your worthwhile, right? Because I think, especially since COVID, a lot of the workforce policies have been, you know, hybrid, go into the office as you can. And, you know, then, but sometimes you'll miss people, right? People don't always go into the office on the same day. So having the cohort in place, you can coordinate with your peers to go in on a certain day and maybe align it to a presentation or a lunch that you all want to attend, or like a training that you want to take together. So I think even more so, this cohort is, you know, you can really, I always say you get out what you put in. And so, you know, if you're willing to really like go in person and connect with people face to face, there is that option. But it's not by any means a requirement. So yeah, the day on Friday was awesome. I was like, man, this is a pretty nice event, and
We
being
did
able to,
fly in and the person from Ann Arbor and the person from Los Angeles, we flew them in for the
right,
event, right? So it wasn't just,
exactly, right.
and we plan to do what more? I think we're thinking 2 or 3 of those a year. So even if you're
Yeah,
remote, you will have a chance to come into town and meet. And again, we didn't ask people to move. I think the group self-selected.
yeah.
So I think this year of our 25, 23 moved to DC, but it wasn't like we asked them to. I think they self-selected to do it. And I will say, honestly, I'm seeing more of that where people do want to be, and we're not in the office 5 days a week. We should first and foremost say that. But I think Maura is describing it right, is what you're seeing is communities that people come in on select days.
Yeah.
And so they'll work at home Monday, Tuesday, come in on Wednesday and Thursday, work at home on Friday kind of thing. And so you'll see that. And we have multiple locations in DC, not a single office. Good question.
Hi there. Thanks again for talking to us. I had a question about some of the agencies that you work with. I would say I've never met a policy area I didn't like or eventually find interesting, but I do have my specific areas of interest. Could you talk a little bit about which of the government agencies you tend to work with?
Yeah. So the answer is pretty much all of them. So give me an example of an area you're interested in. I can give you just an example of space.
Yeah, I mean, I think my interests lean pretty heavily towards education, but I've also worked in privacy policy and health policy and a couple other areas, but not
Sure.
as much as those two.
Yeah, that's a good start. So Department of Education is a place where we have pretty limited presence. So I'm just going to speak a little corporate speak here. Accenture has kind of owned the Department of Education space for like 20 years. Like they literally have an office in the Department of Education building. So it's a really interesting. However, what's really interesting is we are actively and aggressively pursuing going into that space because, as you guys probably have heard, FAFSA was kind of a bit of a disaster this year, like with the new technology and rules. And so there's a real desire at Department of Education now to rethink how they're doing things. So that's a good example. Even where we're not hugely present, we will go attack a market pretty fast when we see that there's an opportunity to do so. On the privacy side, we do a ton of privacy related work because we're, again, one of the larger providers of cybersecurity. And it's always sort of, I mean, look, it's not the same thing, but they're obviously adjacent issues often. And privacy in a number of different contexts. So privacy sometimes from a pure, I mean, just to use an example, you're putting something in the cloud and you have, personally identifiable information kind of problem, right? And the policy issues associated with that. What's really interesting about privacy for us right now, though, a bigger problem is one of the pushes in the government is to start to create, I mean, one of the great goals of data centered world is that you're going to have more ability to share across silos. So, an agency could share with this agency, et cetera. That creates some really complicated privacy issues with agencies. And so yes, sharing data to discover sounds great, but the governance around that data is really challenging. And so good example, that's an issue at IRS. That's an issue at where Mora works, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. It's really any health-related agency, it's a huge issue. It's an issue with the FBI, right? It's an issue with some of the other agencies like DEA, which deal with things like drug control. So like working with pharmacists and doctors around controlling certain drugs, right? Where there's actual personal identifiable information in it, Social Security Administration, et cetera. So so those are good examples of where we touch parts of the problem in various agencies. We're deeper in some agencies than others. So like if you were to say in healthcare, healthcare is our largest single vertical market. So we're very deep at VA, the military health system, CDC, FDA, NIH, CMS, et cetera. There'll be other places where we're kind of more razor thin. So education would be an example of that. But we're not present. We're just not as deep in that space as maybe others. But we're enterprising. We always want to get deeper in all these spaces. So I hope that helps
That's
answer your
helpful. Thank
question.
you.
Yeah, and again, I think in the civil space, they're probably only at the cabinet level. I don't think we're not in an agency, but at some of the sub agencies, you might not see us as friend. Like good example, we're not really big at the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, but we're big in law enforcement, right? So yes, that agency maybe we're not deep, but we're very deep in other ones. As an example.
I will say we're coming on time soon. So is there any final questions, final thoughts that you all want to share?
I mean, I would just encourage you, look at the application where we try to be as descriptive. I mean, corporate forces us to do it a certain way, which wouldn't be the optimal way for us to do it. If you guys have questions, you have our email. Maura and I are both very open to answering any questions. We get a lot of questions and we're happy to sort of feed you answers. I will emphasize, because this happened last year, we can't extend our deadline. So our application is your resume and a little bit of stuff. It's not, application means it makes it sound like a lot more than it actually is. So it's really your resume and a couple of questions, I think more are correct. Like, so
Yeah.
don't get too panicky about that. And we really do, we're hoping to come out sometime in the spring, and working with Rachel to try to do that and meet with in person. But we'd encourage you. This is a program we love, and we love to get applications from a variety of schools. So, and thank you for the time. Again,
thank you
I'm
all.
impressed that anyone showed up at 9 a.m.
I know, same here.
So anyway, thank